Sakshi Singh, Ph.D. Research Scholar at Faculty of Education, Banaras Hindu University. Welcome you all on behalf of Indian Research Scholar Association. Today we are here with a topic doing primary survey. How do we address biases and errors? For this lecture series, our chief speaker, sir, is the Professor L. Venkatachalam, sir. Welcome you, sir. Sir is from Madras Institute of Development Studies. This lecture series is coordinated by Mr. Vikash, sir. He is a research scholar from Indira Gandhi National Tribal University, Amarkantak, and co-convenor of this lecture series is Papi Halder. She is a PhD research scholar from Lucknow University, and co-convenor Dheeresh ji. He is a research scholar from Jawaharlal Nehru University, and organizing secretary of this lecture series, Sir Kuldeep, sir. He is a research scholar from Nagpur University, and I'm also co-convenor of this lecture series. So now I would like to invite Vikash sir for the welcome speech. Over to you, Vikash sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Sakshi ji, because we are already late. I think 6 minutes we are late, and we can understand. I can understand the busy schedule of the respected Venkatachalam sir. So thank you. First of all, I would like to welcome to our respected speaker to Venkatachalam sir. Because sir is a professor in the Madras Institute of Development Studies, Chennai, and sir has also accepted our invitation, and sir has also selected a very beautiful and relevant topic for the research scholars. I would like to welcome the all organizing team of the India Research Scholars Associates of this program. Sakshi, Dheeresh, Kuldeep, and Papi. I would like to welcome to the all participants. Those all have joined this lecture series from the various universities and from the various countries, because some scholars had joined from the Tajikistan, I think Mujahda, and Himmat Usullah Khan had joined from the Afghanistan. One Abdullah had joined from the Malaysia. So these all are the research scholars have joined from the various countries. So I will not take the much and more time, because sir is delivering very wonderful lecture that is a very relevant for us. And so for this, I would like to again invite to Sakshi Singh for the further proceeding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vikash sir. I would like to invite Papi ji to introduce sir to ourselves.
Yes, so I request to Papi ji, because sir has a very big CV, and sir has completed a lot of work in academia and research. So I request to please give the brief introduction about this, sir. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Namaste sir. I am Papi Halder, PhD research scholar, Department of Commerce, University of Lucknow. Basically, I am from Bangladesh. I'm international student, and sir has big profile, I know, and lot of contributions. So it's not possible for me to say in details about the sir. And now I would like to say a very short description about the sir. Sir is the professor of Madras Institute of Development Studies, Chennai. And sir is also the chair professor of Reserve Bank of India. Sir is a managing editor of Review of Development and Change Journal. Basically, this journal is under the SAIS publications. Sir has completed PhD from University of Madras, MPhil from Annamalai University, MA is also from the Annamalai University, Tamil Nadu. And the research interest, research interest and teaching of the sir is environmental economics, behavioral economics, economic theory, and research methodology. Sir has published 2 books, more than 30 research papers, more than 20 book chapters in various national and international reputed journals. Sir is also the member of various academic institutions and research institutions. Sir is also the visiting fellow of different foreign universities like UK, Sweden, USA, Canada. Sir has received many awards for his research contribution. Sir has presented his paper more than 50 national and international conferences. Sir has completed more than 15 research projects. So this is the brief introduction about the sir. So it's not possible for me to say in details because we have a time limitation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Papiji. And now I'm inviting you, sir. We are waiting for your valuable speech. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sakshi, Papi, and Mr. Vikash. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Vikash for having invited me to be here with you to share some of my thoughts on doing primary survey. I've been doing primary survey for my research for the past 30 years or so. The point is that when we study research methodology in the classrooms, we will be taught of various survey methods like the qualitative surveys, including the focus group discussion, narrative stories, etc., etc. So we indeed study a lot of these things in the classrooms, but when we go to the field, we encounter with various kinds of issues, practical issues. The field is very, very complex compared to the things that we learn from the classrooms. And therefore, what I thought was that I can just talk about the practical problems that we encounter when we go for doing survey, and how do we overcome these problems. Certain problems can be identified and addressed. Some problems can be identified but could not be addressed. And some problems can neither be identified nor addressed. So these are the issues that we, the field survey researchers, very often encounter with. So I thought that I can also talk about the need for the survey in social science research and some kind of evolution of the survey in social science research, especially in economics, of course. Many of you may be from economics discipline as well, but I'm not going to talk about the economics of doing survey or doing survey in economics, but it will be a general kind of discussion which can benefit all of you, whether you are from economics or from non-economics. So that's my idea. And so once again, I congratulate Mr. Vikas for this initiative, because this kind of initiative brings all the research scholars, not only across the country, but also across the globe. I'm very happy that many scholars from other parts of the world also have joined this group. And basically research, especially academic research, especially in social sciences, require exchange of ideas. Okay, so nobody can claim any originality in our ideas. When we write theses or when we publish our papers, we get our ideas from various sources. And in research, interaction is always very important. And so far, I have not come across any such kind of organization, name the initiative that has brought all the research scholars from various walks of academic life. Okay, and I would like to congratulate Mr. Vikash and his team once again. So I wish that this forum perishes in the coming years. So we will be able to exchange very productive ideas in order to enrich our knowledge, enrich our research work, and ultimately enrich the livelihoods, welfare of the people. Okay, why do we do research? It's the ultimate aim is to improve the social welfare, right? So I expect that this organization, IRSA, will definitely contribute towards improved social well-being in the coming years. So with that, let me just start my talk. So basically, if you look at the data, whether it is CSO, whether it is NSO, National Statistical Office data, whether it is periodic labor force survey, or whether it is National Family Health Survey, whether it is poverty-related surveys, right? We measure poverty lines, etc. Whether it is inflation, whatever the kind of data that we are dealing with, in one way or other, these data, the so-called secondary data, are derived from the primary surveys. Okay, the data mainly comes, even though we are dealing with so many secondary data sources for our research, the basic data comes from survey. For example, very recently, there was a controversy over the consumption expenditure. The consumption expenditure survey data released by the Niti Aayog very recently. A lot of discussion was going on. If you had been reading the yellow newspapers, business newspapers like Live Mint, Economic Times, Financial Express, Business Standard, Business Line. So I do regularly read all these newspapers. And you might have found that, there was a controversy whether the consumption expenditure in India is very low, measured at the lower level, or it is understated or overstated, whatever the kind of data that we are talking about, has some problems. We keep debating on them. Because in social sciences, as I said, there is no single answer. There may be many different answers. For example, we jokingly say that if there are two economists, there will be three ideas or more than three ideas. Okay, because in social sciences, we don't have any precise answer. Okay, somebody may question the consumer expenditure data if it is somewhat higher. Somebody may question if the same data is at the lower level. Okay, so anything can attract problems because, as I said, there is no precise answer. In this context, how do we assess the primary data, and especially how do we assess the way in which the primary data is being collected from the field? Okay, so basically, friends, you should understand one thing, namely, all the information through the primary survey will have to come from individuals. And the individual minds are very complex. In economics, we study individual behavior. Economics deals with individual behavior. According to Lionel Robbins, the economics is a science which studies the human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. That means that our aim is to study the human behavior. Of course, sociologists, anthropologists, political scientists, all of them do study the human behavior, but economics studies the behavior in a very rigorous manner. And what we understand from economics that studies human behavior is that the human behavior is very complex, right, which cannot be understood. And with the given complexity, how do we get the information from the individuals? For example, if at all we have to measure poverty, we have to go to the field, select the households, individuals on a random basis, and then ask these people how much do they earn from their current occupation, how much do they spend, what are other sources of income, expenditure. We have to ask them a whole lot of questions. And from those questions and from that information provided by the individuals, we have to estimate the income across all the households that we have elicited the information from. And then this information can be extrapolated to the entire population. And that is where the problem arises. Okay. Point is whether the information that we are using to extrapolate to the overall population is valid or not. If the information is neither valid nor reliable, then extrapolating this information from the sample to the overall population is not possible. But when we are dealing with poverty measurement, we have to tell the society that, at the societal level, at the economy level, so this is the level of poverty. But the problem there is that we can't be measuring income expenditure from all individuals in the society because of cost factor. There is a cost called the transaction cost of doing survey. So therefore, we select some sample households, individuals. From that sample, we extrapolate it. But if the information that we derive from that particular sample is not valid, then the information that we extrapolate for the entire population may not be valid. Okay, very good, Mr. Milan, right? You have raised your hand. You please raise your question. Mr. Milan Mandal. Do you have a question?
Sir, actually, we will take the question after end of the session.
Okay. But someone has raised his hand. That is why. Okay. Okay. So, survey, has to be eliciting valid and reliable information. By the way, what is validity, reliability? We will discuss later on. But then there is a kind of bit history I would like to just to share with you behind survey method. If you look at the classical literature in economics, you have classical economists like Adam Smith, Ricardo, Malthus, all these people who developed the ideas in economics domain. And before classical school also you have physiocrats and mercantilists, right? So if you look at their ideas, and their ideas consists of three things. One is the theory, economic theory. They took the prevailing theory, the blueprint. They also used logic, and finally they used their own imagination. So three things: the theory, logic, and the imagination. That is why, how do you get creativity? Creativity comes from your imagination. When you look at some phenomenon, depending on how many people we look at, that phenomenon, I mean, how many people look at this phenomenon? This phenomenon can be interpreted in many different ways, okay? That is where the creativity comes. So the classical economists were very creative because they used imagination, logic, and economic theory. There was no data, there was no survey, nothing. With that, they developed economics, for example. And then you have neoclassical economists, those who have come out with sophisticated kind of ideas to analyze the economic phenomena, like economic growth, labor market operations, international trade, all of them, okay? And they have used, again, theories and mathematical methods. And gradually what happened in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, there was a group of economists who promoted falsification as the standard tool for judging whether the theories that we develop in social sciences, especially in economics, are scientific or not. So how do you say whether a particular theory is scientific or not? Because our disciplines are social sciences. Why do you say sciences? On what basis you define your subjects as sciences? Okay, so what is science? So this was the kind of controversy. The question is whether the theories that we develop in our discipline, are they scientific in nature? Right. So this was the kind of debate that was going on in the discipline, and in order to answer that, the economists developed certain kinds of criteria. Okay, so could you see my PPT?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is it moving? Has it moved?
Yes, sir, it is moving.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Sometimes it does not move, that is okay. So basically, what is this scientific method? So you have a great thinker called Popper. He says that if a theory can be falsifiable, then that theory can be called a scientific theory. If a theory can be falsifiable, then that theory can be called scientific. Okay. So what does it mean? What do you mean by falsification? In simple terms, it says that the theory should be subjected for empirical testing. You develop a theory, take that theory to the field and test it. When the theory is tested, if the theory is able to predict properly, then that theory can be called as scientific theory. Suppose, let me just develop a theory, demand theory, which says that when price goes up of a commodity, normal commodity, the quantity demanded comes down, and vice versa. That means that when price goes up, quantity demanded comes down, and when price comes down, quantity demanded goes up. Okay. So how do you say that this theory is a scientific theory? So falsification. What do you mean by falsification? You have to take this theory to the field. What you have to do is to collect data on various commodities. What are the data that you are supposed to collect? You have to collect price data, quantity demanded, quantity supplied, these three things. So if you look at this data pertaining to three indicators, that will tell you when price went up, the quantity demanded came down, and when price went down, the quantity demanded increased. Okay, so based on this, you can say that look, this theory, namely demand theory, predicted that when price goes up, quantity demanded would come down and vice versa. Therefore, in the field also, we have collected data, tested it, and found that when price went up, indeed the quantity came down, and therefore this theory is falsified. And this theory can be accepted as a scientific theory in the discipline. In case in the field, if something goes opposite, again it is falsification. But when it goes opposite, you are developing an alternative theory, which is scientific. Okay, falsification does not necessarily mean that you have to make a theory false. No. If the theory does not predict something, then what is that it predicts? Alternatively, it says when price goes up, the demand also goes up, right? If this is the case, then you have developed an alternate theory. So basically, the empirical testing is called falsification, and either the theory can predict your hypothesis, null hypothesis, or you can develop an alternative hypothesis. So this is how the theories were justified to be scientific. Falsification has become the core of the scientific research in social sciences, especially in economics. Okay, so in order to falsify a theory, what you have to do? You have to take the theory to the field and use data. Sometimes you need not have to kind of collect data, but sometimes through observation, sometimes through experimentation. Yeah? And what happens is that in economics, in the initial years, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, economists suggested that we need to falsify all the theories that we develop in order to make the discipline more scientific. Okay, but what they suggested was that you don't collect any primary data from the individuals. You look at the secondary data, right? You collect the secondary data from the markets. For example, if you wish to purchasing toilet soaps, okay, so you collect data related to toilet soaps, secondary data from all the firms that produce toilet soaps, or from the market where all toilet soaps are being sold. How much soaps have been sold last year, this year? What was the price last year? What's the price this year? So you collect secondary data. Can someone tell me why?
I think slide
yes?
is not moving, sir.
This is the problem with
Yes,
Google.
now moving, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Sir, it is
So I will.
Sir, this second slide.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So basically, now initially, the economists suggested that we need to collect only secondary data. Can someone tell me why secondary data is important as far as the economists is concerned? Why they didn't want the primary data to be collected? Why they didn't want us to go to the people and ask their opinions or information about all these kinds of things? Anybody?
To support the primary data. So to support primary data, we need secondary data, which has already.
Okay.
Well.
Good. Okay. Good. I appreciate that.
Which is already published somewhere or maybe collected by someone else, used by according to his way.
Right.
We can even use secondary data for our purpose. We can extract the information from that data too.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. So good response. I appreciate that. Yeah. So basically, economists, they look at secondary data and they want us to collect the secondary data in order to falsify theories. Okay, that is because the secondary data is the one which reflects the revealed preference of the individuals. What do you mean by revealed preference? People's actual behavior is getting reflected in terms of data that is available from the secondary sources. For example, if you want to know how people behave in relation to purchasing toilet soaps, you need not have to ask people how many toilet soap you have purchased and how much, what type of the toilet soap you have purchased. All those things you need not have to ask. All that you need to ask is, to collect the data from the field. That itself tells you what is the preference of the people. If people have purchased more of hammam soap rather than Lux, then it is the market data tells us that people's preferences are more for the hammam soap rather than Lux soap. Based on this, you predict you make your policy suggestion regarding production of soap. Okay, so they believed in revealed preference. Indeed, the economists promoted revealed preference theory in the initial years. Okay, and then what happened was that this was very much accepted by the people, by the researchers, and they did not rely on data coming from primary sources because economists always believed that people will have to reveal their preference, but they are not capable of stating their preference. People are good at revealing their preference in the market, but they are not good at stating the preference. What do you mean by stating the preference? When you ask some question, they will give you some answer, but they may not be able to provide proper answer. Sometimes they may understate, sometimes they may overstate. Okay, but in the market they cannot understate, overstate. But when you ask them through survey some information, they may not be able to provide adequate information or overstated information. They may provide or understated information. Okay, so since this problem is a serious problem, namely the individuals not able to reflect the preferences through their stated answers, the economists discouraged survey methods. Okay, this was going on for quite some time. In the 60s and 70s, what happened was that many governments had to deal with environmental projects or development projects that caused environmental problems. Okay, for example, constructing a dam leads to kind of deforestation, leads to loss of biodiversity, leads to inundation of land. So land, biodiversity, forest, these are all environmental commodities, environmental resources. But in the case of environmental resources, there is no price. In the case of toilet soap, there is a price whose value can be easily estimated. In the case of computer, there is a market price. In the case of cell phone, there is a market price. But in the case of drinking water from a lake, or in the case of some species, let us say tiger, is there a value? No. What's the value of an elephant? What's the value of rhino? What is the value of the recreational benefit that I would enjoy from a lake? What's the value of the aesthetic benefit that I would enjoy from a seashore, right? Varieties of environmental goods and services, right, are not traded in the market, and therefore they don't fetch any market price, right? So when there is no market price, when there is no data on how much environmental goods and services are being consumed by people, right? How do you test the theory of environmental good? is related to environment. For example, how do you compute cost benefit analysis? How do you compute environmental impact assessment? How do you know that whether the lake, quality of the lake will have to be improved with some money or not? Because you need cost benefit analysis. If I put this much of public money, what would be my benefit? Benefit will be there, but how do you measure it? So therefore, the environmental economists gradually inclined towards survey methods. Some of them suggested initially, even Marshall in the 1920s suggested that we have to use survey method to elicit information about environmental goods and services that are non-marketed in nature. They don't have any price. Even today, there is no market price. And therefore, the researchers went to the households and individuals and asked them about their values of environment. For example, there is a method called a contingent valuation method. You must be familiar with that. Okay. What is contingent valuation method? Suppose the government is planning to invest some 100 crores on a water body. The water body is already polluted, but government thinks that if it incurs 100 crores worth of money in controlling pollution or in improving the water quality by way of controlling sewage pollution, then the water quality will improve. But when water quality improves, what kind of the benefit that it generates to the society? That they have to know. For example, if the benefit generated through this pollution control measure is less than 100 crores, then the investing 100 crores is not economically viable. Okay, therefore this 100 crores should be spent somewhere else, because the money that is available with the government is acutely scarce. It is taxpayers' money. It's a scarce resource which has to be deployed, which has to be invested only in those activities which generate maximum benefits. So therefore, government wanted to know how much benefit that the society would derive in case this 100 crore is being invested on improving the quality of water body. So they wanted to go to the field and ask them, okay, the government is planning to incur 100 crores, and because of that, the water pollution will be controlled, the encroachment will be removed, solid waste dumping will be prevented, and water quality will improve. You can use that water for drinking purpose. You can use that water for aesthetic purpose. You can use that water for irrigation purpose. You can use that water for fishing, because different people will do different things, right? So therefore, you have to go to different people. Some people may be willing to catch fish. Some people may be willing to go for boating. Some people may be willing to take that water for drinking purpose. Some people may be willing to take bath in the water. Okay, so different preferences will have to be elicited from the people, and therefore survey method. So the survey method will simply ask them, how much are you willing to pay for improved water quality? Then suppose if I am a fisherman interested in fishing, then I will calculate how much fish I will catch from this improved water quality in the lake. Then accordingly, I will say, right, my willingness to pay value. For example, let me say that, every year I am willing to pay some 5,000 rupees in case the water quality is improved and in case fish is available in a very kind of, a good environment like that. Okay. Similarly, if you ask a recreationist who will go for recreation in the lake, then he or she will say some amount. Okay. So you collect all these amounts, elicit all these amounts from different people, and then estimate the marginal benefit, the kind of benefit that you will get from the investment of 100 crores on improving water quality. Okay. So suppose you collect all this information and then estimate the total benefit to be 200 crores to the society. Then that says that since the program is going to generate 100 crores net benefit, total benefit is 200, cost is 100, net benefit is 100. So you are convinced that this program can be implemented. Okay. If the net benefit is 0 or minus, if the total benefit is 90 crores, for example, then this program is not worth undertaking. Okay, so that is the kind of conclusion that you arrive at. So in the 60s, 70s, many development projects, many environmental projects, many infrastructure projects, they all affected the environment, which is a non-market resource actually. Okay, so how do you get information about the environment? So many researchers, they went to the households. And this is a kind of deviation from what economists have prescribed. The mainstream economists prescribed, don't go to households. But since there is no secondary data to compute benefit cost analysis, because this is an important policy decision, merely because of the fact that you don't have data, you should not say that, no, I will not implement this dam project, or I will not implement this road project, or I will not implement this industrial project, which is going to affect the environment. No. So they started collecting data. So gradually the survey method tried to kind of, it started dominating the academic research in economics. But then what happened was that over a period of time, when they used a lot of survey methods to elicit information, and the results suggested that the economic theories behind these, efforts, okay, the studies are deviating from the theories that are being prescribed in mainstream economics. For example, let me put it in a more clear manner.
So please change the PPT slide.
Yeah. Don't worry. I will do that. I'll do that. Don't worry about PPT. So the sorry. Okay. So the economists initially said people are rational, right? What do you mean by rationality? People are able to mobilize all available information in order to take a decision, and the decision will be perfectly all right. It will be perfect. No other decision will be superior. Okay. So what economists have been telling us is that the individuals are rational. They are very brilliant people. If you provide some information, they will make use of that information, process that information, and then they will kind of, use that information in order to reach a best decision. On this basis, many policies were formulated, right? On the basis of rationality assumption, many policies were formulated. But when the researchers went to the field collecting data through survey methods, what they found was that all these information, data, they suggest that people are not rational. They are doing a lot of mistakes. And based on this result, 3 schools of thought emerged in the academic domain, especially in economics. What are those 3 schools of thought? The first school of thought is the school of thought coming from the mainstream economy. They said, we warned you already. We have already cautioned you not to use primary survey. And you use primary survey, bring wrong results, information, and now you claim that, your results are good, but the underlying theory is bad. We don't accept that. Therefore, don't use primary survey. Right? Okay, so this is one school of thought. So the second school argued that, look, your theory is wrong. The survey results coming from the field, they are right, and your theory is wrong, and therefore you have to rethink about your theories, modify your theories accordingly based on the results coming from the survey. So this is the just opposite school of thought. And in between, there is another school which says that, look, both of you are correct. Already existing economic theory is correct, and the data that comes from the field, whatever it says, is also correct. But only thing is, you have to identify where the problem is in theory. Based on the results, you have to modify this theory in those areas where you find problems with the theory, in those areas which are problematic in nature. Okay. So, but friends, so this is the kind of story, and still this controversy is going on whether the primary survey has to be used or not. But of course, we have started using lot of primary surveys, and nowadays, as I said, all our secondary data are coming from the primary surveys, and therefore we have to be concerned about primary survey, right? Now, there is another school of thought. What another school of thought says, when the environmental economists asked, okay, there is no secondary data, we have to use primary survey to collect this data. You say that we should not use primary data, but what is the alternative method? Some economists, they suggested the experiments as alternative methods. Okay, so let us say there are three different sources of information that we have to deal with. One is already existing secondary data. Second is primary survey. The third one is experiment. Okay, please look at this chart. Could you see this chart clearly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So now, so information for empirical verification comes from two major sources. One is secondary data, the second one is primary data. In the case of secondary data, you have a whole lot of modern sources, okay? For example, Economic and Political Weekly provides data, CMI provides data, Niti Aayog provides data, CSO provides data. All these modern sources include the secondary sources. And then in certain cases, you find archival data, the historical data that are available in the archives, okay? So secondary data. And then you have primary data, which can be classified into household or individual surveys and experiments, okay? And then the experiments can be classified into two different categories. One is laboratory experiments. In economics, in social sciences, we can't use a laboratory. For example, in physics, chemistry, people are using pipette, purette, all those kinds of equipments in the laboratory. But in economics, our laboratory is nothing but the classroom. In the classroom, you use the students as the objects in the experiments. For example, in 2017, Richard Thaler won Nobel Prize in economics. He is one of the leading behavioral economists who have used some laboratory experiments to falsify his theories. What he did was he took a coffee mug, some 25 coffee mug and 25 candy bar chocolates. Both of them are having the same price, coffee mug and the candy bar. So he randomly distributed these coffee mugs and candy bar in his class. The class consisted of 50 students. So 25 students randomly got candy bars and 25 students randomly got coffee mug. Then Richard Thaler asked the students to exchange. In case, for example, if I have got coffee mug, I can exchange it for candy bar because I may like candy bar more than coffee mug. Similarly, somebody who has got candy bar should be willing to exchange it for coffee mug because that person may like coffee mug more than candy bar. But what actually happened was 90% of the students did not want to exchange, right? But what was expected from mainstream economic theory was at least 50% of the students would be willing to exchange coffee mug for candy bar and vice versa. Why? Because in a class, you randomly assign these coffee mugs and candy bar, and you expect 50% of the student will prefer this one and 50% of the students will prefer the other one, and therefore among 50% of the students there will be exchange of these two goods. But in reality, through this experiment, it's a very simple experiment which is called classroom experiment. He found that there is an endowment effect. What is endowment effect? For example, before the coffee mug came to me, I was indifferent between coffee mug and candy bar. That means that whatever I get, I will keep it, right? Coffee mug or candy bar. But once I have got the coffee mug, then it becomes my endowment. I am attached too much with that through my psychology, right? And therefore, I am not willing to give it up, even though the candy bar is also equally valuable, right, to me. Okay, so he found this important theory which was going against the mainstream economics, and therefore he developed this theory called endowment theory, and then developed a lot of other things like nudges, and got Nobel Prize in 2017. Okay, but the problem with this laboratory experiment is that people are using students. Students are not equivalent to the people on the street. Okay, therefore a lot of people criticize these laboratory experiments. Then there is a field experiment. What is field experiment? Researchers moved on from laboratory, from classrooms to the field. For example, there are field experimentators. For example, Esther Duflo, Abhijit Banerjee, they got Nobel Prize in the year 2019 for their work on field experiments, okay, randomized control trial and all, okay. So they went to the field, interacted with the people, conducted some experiments, and then came out with very important results that are being widely used for policy making purpose. For example, I will give you one simple example. Farmers in African countries are very subsistence farmers, okay, very poor farmers. In case they use fertilizer, more fertilizer, then their productivity will go up, profit will go up, they will become rich, relatively rich, okay, but they are not using fertilizer, even though some of the African governments give a lot of subsidy to fertilizer, okay. Even though subsidy is available, why the farmers are not willing to use more fertilizer? This is a puzzle. In case they use it, they can gain more, right? But they are not using it. Now, how do we make the farmers to use more fertilizer? So this is the researcher question. So this field experimenter, namely Esther Duflo, Michael Kramer, Abhijit Banerjee, all of them went to African countries, did this experimentation. Namely, they gave fertilizer periods before the plantation takes place, after harvesting, during plantation. So 3 times or 4 times like that in different time periods. Okay, and from this experiment, I mean, they have given this fertilizer to large number of farmers. Actually, they have used huge amount of money to do that. Okay? So from these experiments, what they have found was that in case you supply fertilizer immediately after harvesting, the farmers will be able to buy these fertilizers because immediately after harvesting they will have some money, right? And they will make use of this fertilizer for the next season, right? And that is how one can improve the profitability and the welfare of the farmers. Okay, the point is subsidy is subsidy alone does not make any difference. When do you give the subsidy? So the subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, has to be given such a way that the farmers are able to buy fertilizer immediately after harvesting. Okay, so that is how you can improve the situation. Okay, so nowadays we are not only using survey methods but also experiments as alternative to survey method. Okay, now we have several problems with the secondary data. We have several problems with the archival data, and so primary data plays a very crucial role in falsifying many of our theories actually. Okay, so what are we supposed to do? So in order to do primary survey, so we will have lecture on experimental methods later on, provided Mr. Vikas is interested in doing it. Okay. So right now, let us focus on primary survey. So basically, primary survey is very important, but the data may be infected with two different types of errors, means problems in the data. Okay, one is the sampling error. What is sampling error? Can someone tell me what is sampling error? The error that occurs because of the sampling procedure as such. For example, if you use probability sampling rather than non-probability sampling, then you will end up with some error in the results. Or vice versa. Rather than using probability sampling, if you are using non-probability sampling, then you will have some problem. And therefore, depending on the issue, depending on the kind of research issue and your sample frame, you have to use appropriate sampling. So the point is that there is sampling error and non-sampling error. Today, we are going to talk about non-sampling error. Maybe, I'm sorry, it's already 5:05. Mr. Vikas, how long I can go, please?
You can proceed, sir. No problem, sir. You can take time, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now, you are familiar with sampling, namely probability sampling. You have simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified random sampling, multi-stage sampling, proportionate sampling, disproportionate sampling. There are varieties of probability sampling which are being widely used in the field to select the households, to select the respondents, depending on the research issue that we are dealing with. Indeed, I'm sure that Vikas may also organize a lecture on sampling by a statistician. And you have non-probability sampling. So the probability sampling is being widely used by economists, whereas the non-probability sampling is being widely used by non-economists. Okay, for example, a sociologist may have a particular interest in identifying women's behavior in relation to anemia, for example. Okay, so therefore the sociologist will have to target only those people who are having anemia problem and then ask some of the questions. Okay, so in this sense, it may be a convenient sampling or purposeful sampling which can be used. Okay, so depending on the research issue at hand, you will decide whether you have to use probability sampling or non-probability sampling. In the case of non-probability sampling, whether you have to use judgment sampling, convenient sampling, quota sampling, or snowball sampling. Okay. So basically, the primary survey can be used as a substitute for secondary research or as a complement. Okay. So please keep this in mind. So primary sources involve individual surveys. We go to the individuals and then ask them several questions. Okay, and households. Okay, you go to the households. You treat household as an individual unit, and then you select one of the household member over 18 years of old. Over 18 years of age, and then you ask them ask information about, for example, if you are interested in finding out their expenditure pattern, then you ask this individual in the household about the expenditure for the entire household. Okay, what is the total expenditure per month on rice, on pulse, on oil, on alcohol, on tobacco? You ask everything related to expenditure, income, savings, asset holding position, etc., from one particular selected individual in the household. But this individual will provide information about the entire household, about all the people staying in the household. Actually, that is why it's called household survey. Sometimes household survey interacts with two people. It may be husband and wife, or it may be elder or younger person, or it may be some male or female, whatever it may be. Okay, it all depends on your research issue. And the non-economists like sociologists, anthropologists, they depend on group discussions. Okay, so for example, if someone wants to study women's problem in rural areas, then they will go and kind of ask some 5, 6 to 10 or 10, 20 women to get together, and then they will ask several questions to the entire group, and any women can provide answer from that group, and based on this information, and they will do the analysis and come out with the suggestions. And there is a narrative story which will be told by individuals. For example, when you go to a village and want to find out how the water irrigation pattern existed in the past and irrigation pattern in the present, then you have to interact with the old man who will tell you 20 years back how was the irrigation, or 30 years back how was the irrigation, all those kinds of things. Okay, of course, experiments we have already done. So primary surveys, basically it is the respondents who provide answers to written or oral questions. Okay, and we use different types of survey techniques. Personal survey means that you go to individuals, ask them direct questions, and they will directly answer to you. It is also called face-to-face survey. Okay, so the advantage with the face-to-face survey is that in case you have some doubts regarding the answer provided by the respondent, or if the respondent has some doubts regarding the questions that you ask them, these things can be immediately clarified, and therefore you will be able to get some valid answers from the personnel. And also sometimes the individual may tell you that right now he or she is busy with other things, and you can come later, like that. So those kinds of arrangements can be possible in the case of personal interview. Similarly, nowadays in India, more than 90% of the people have cell phones. But maybe 15 years back or 10 years back, you used to have only a very less number of people having phones, actually. So in a country where telephone is available with most of the people, you can conduct telephonic survey. Very recently, during the COVID-19 period, we used to have lockdown, and government of Tamil Nadu wanted MIDS to study how their COVID-19 packages, like providing free rice, free food, etc. So how do they do? Whether people are benefited out of it or not? Okay, so they wanted to know, and therefore they wanted the MIDS to do a survey among the beneficiaries in Tamil Nadu. So we can't go out because there are restrictions, and you cannot go out of your house or out of your area, because there are a lot of restrictions. And therefore what we did was that we used telephone numbers from our previous surveys. We surveyed around 2.2 lakh households in 2018, and from that we have got telephone numbers, and we used a telephonic survey to elicit information about what are they doing, whether they have availed the vaccine, whether they have got free food, whether the medical facilities were available. All those things were indeed elicited from people, and then the results were produced to the to the government, and government took several initiatives based on our findings actually. Okay. Similarly, you have survey, you send your questionnaire to many respondents. Okay. Who is this? 1 minute. Hello.
Durga ji.
Sorry. I thought it is some phone from the organizers. Sorry. Okay. So mail survey is just sending the questionnaire to the respondents, and then nowadays you have online survey. You send a Word document to either through email or through the kind of Google forms. There are varieties of ways in which the primary survey can be conducted, and as I said, there are advantages and disadvantages of each survey. Used actually. Okay, so the advantages of primary survey is that these surveys provide a quick, inexpensive, efficient, and accurate information about a population. Population here does not mean that we are talking about the entire population of India. 100 here means that suppose we want to study the agricultural laborers, then agricultural laborers form our population from which we derive data. Okay, so what are the major problems with primary surveys? Before that, what is the difference between questionnaire and interview schedule? Anybody? Questionnaire and interview schedule? Interview schedule is the one which will be used by the researcher. The researcher will ask the questions, the respondent will answer, and the researcher will record everything. It's the one which will be sent to the respondents, and the respondents themselves will fill in the questionnaire actually. So this is the fundamental difference between interview schedule and questionnaire. Okay, and nowadays the computer packages, right? There is a package called Survey CTO, which is being widely used for eliciting information. Okay, so you need not have to take a paper questionnaire or interview schedule to the people. All that you need to do is to just upload this package Survey CTO in our tab. Okay, and then the questionnaire will have to be formatted in the package, and you can take the tab to the household or individual, ask all the questions. When you enter all the questions, finally you give upload, and the entire data will be uploaded in the server, and that data will become your master table actually. You can readily do the analysis. Suppose you have done 100 survey today, and if you want to do analysis of the data that you have got from these 100 households, you can immediately do the analysis, do descriptive statistics, many things actually. Okay, so that now survey has been made very easy, right? Okay. So now, when we talk about primary survey, there are many errors and biases. Biases are systematic errors. Errors are deviations from the prediction actually. Okay. What we want to do is to minimize error and minimize biases so that our prediction from the data that we collect from the surveys has to be accurate. Okay. Census results will have minimum errors, but it's very costly, right? Census means enumerating everybody in few households. Okay, so how do we conduct error-free primary survey? So the interview schedule plays a very crucial role in getting error-free information. Any interview schedule. What is interview schedule? The schedule that will be used by the researcher to ask questions to the respondent, and the respondent will answer, and the answer will be recorded in the interview schedule by the researcher actually. So usually the interview schedule will have three major kind of components in it. One is the socio-demographic questions. For example, from the respondents, you will ask them how many people are there in the household, how many of them are males, how many of them are females, what is their age, what is their education level, whether they are working somewhere, what is their income. All kinds of socio-demographic questions will be recorded in the first part of the questionnaire, that is interview schedule. The second part will be dealing with the core objective. For example, if you are dealing with agricultural laborers related activities, then you can ask the people, the respondents about how many days the person is working in the agriculture sector, what is the wage rate, how much income he earns from agriculture, how much income he earns from non-agriculture. All those kinds of questions will be in the core part of the questionnaire, namely the second part of the questionnaire will deal with that. If it is environment related, water related, then all the core questions will be dealt with in the second part of questionnaire. And then all our income, expenditure, asset related questions will have to be in the last part of the questionnaire, because at the beginning itself, you cannot ask these questions because they are all very sensitive questions. For example, even now, if you ask people how much income they earn, nobody will be willing to tell you the actual income that they earn, because they will not, many of the people in India, for example, they are getting many different welfare schemes. Okay, so this, LPG, subsidized LPG, subsidized water, subsidized rice, etc., etc., and therefore they may feel that in case they reveal the true income, they may not be able to get all the benefits from the government actually, and therefore they will always tend to understate their income. Okay, so since these questions are very sensitive, they should not be asked at the beginning of the interview schedule, beginning of the interview, and therefore all these questions will have to be asked in the later part of the questionnaire. Basically, when you ask socio-demographic questions, which are not that much sensitive, when you ask core questions, so when you gradually ask these kinds of questions initially, then the household will be able to establish a good rapport, confidence in you, and therefore they will be able to tell some proper answer regarding income, asset, etc. Okay, but at the outset, if you ask income related questions, then they will throw you out. Okay, and then once you develop this question, interview schedule, you have to pre-test the interview schedule. Okay, what do you mean by pre-testing? You select some 5-6 households initially, and then ask these questions to these households. Okay, so the pre-testing will tell you whether you have left out some of the questions, you have added some of the irrelevant questions, whether you are asking some sensitive question in the beginning, or whether you are asking insensitive questions, whether you are asking useless questions. All of them will be tested during pre-testing with limited number of households. Number of households, you can now revise the interview schedule, and then you can also have mock sessions. Okay, so either the mock sessions can be had with your own friends, with your own colleagues initially, because all that you need to do is to just ask the participants in the mock session to act as the real households. In case you were an household, how would you have answered these questions? Okay, so the mock sessions can also help you tremendously to improve the interview schedule. And then you have to go for pilot studies. Pilot study means after revising the questionnaire or interview schedule, after pre-testing and mock sessions, you go for pilot studies. In the case of pilot studies, you have to improve the number of, increase the number of households that you have used in the pre-testing. Need not have to be the same households, but you can go to different households. For example, during the pre-testing, if you have used 5 households, In the case of pre-testing, sorry, in the case of pilot studies, you may have to use 25 households, so that you can do the real analysis that you are going to do after all the household surveys are over. Okay, so this is a mini kind of survey and mini analysis. So that will tell you whether you have covered adequate variables in the survey, in the interview schedule, whether you can do a meaningful analysis with the information that you collect from the household survey, etc. So this is a mini survey. So in order to see whether you can do a proper analysis with the data collected, because sometimes you might miss one of the important variables during the main survey, and after the survey is over, if that variable is very important for further analysis, then you cannot go back to all the 350 households, for example, to collect this information. Okay, so that is where the pilot studies play a major role in order to minimize errors. Okay, and then you have to conduct main survey. After doing all these kinds of exercise rigorously, you cannot simply develop a questionnaire and go to the field, collect data. No, you have to do all this preliminary work before going to the field. It may take 1 or 2 months actually to finish off all these kinds of things, right? So then only main survey will have to be done. Okay, so we have different types of biases and errors. For example, sampling error, which needs to be dealt with by properly sampling the respondents or households. And then you have systematic error. This is a non-sampling error. That means that the error that occurs from the survey as such. Okay, for example, you have this respondent error. What is respondent error? You approach a respondent, and then there are two different types of errors. One is non-response error. The ratio of sample respondents who answered to total sample respondents. Refusal and not contacted respondents are included in this category. For example, you just go and ask one respondent, are you willing to answer some of the questions? If they say no, or if they say yes, and then off the way, they may say no. For example, let me just give you one example that we have encountered with. When we went to the field for a pilot study, we were talking to a woman respondent, and she was answering, and in between the male respondent, her husband came, and then he completely stopped the entire interview. She said, we will not give any interview, and she also very clearly told her wife not to give any. So there is a kind of a refusal to do the interview actually. Okay, and there is a problem called self-selection bias. What is self-selection bias? You go to a village and you interact only with the sample households. Okay, you might have already selected the sample households. For example, in this village, on the second street, the third household will have to be interviewed. Okay, so you have already spotted the third household and doing the interview. Then a neighbor who is very powerful, she will come and she will say, no, I need to be interviewed. Okay, so this is what is called self-selection bias actually. People voluntarily enrolling for the interview, which will affect the validity of the results. Okay, so response bias, respondents misinterpret the truth either consciously or unconsciously, which can be classified into deliberate misrepresentation, right? Income, for example, everybody will try to deliberately understate income, and unconscious misrepresentation. Respondents may be truthful, but error may arise from questions formats, content, etc., etc. Okay. For example, let me give you one small story. Two friends, they had a kind of fight over some particular issue. Okay, they could not resolve that issue, and therefore they wanted to meet the local priest in the church and then discuss with the priest, and then next day, same time, they will come back and then discuss what the priest had said about this particular issue. Okay, so they went to the priest and they discussed, and next day they came back to the same place. So the first one asked the second one, "Did you meet the priest?" "Yes." "So did you discuss the issue?" "Yes." What was his answer? He said, "Yes." Priest's answer was yes. Okay. Then what was your question? My question was whether I can pray while smoking, right? You see the order of the question. Whether I can pray while smoking, okay? What was the answer by the priest? Yes. Okay. Now, that fellow asked this fellow, "Did you consult the priest?" "Yes." What was the, did you discuss the issue? "Yes." What was his answer? "No." "No?" What was your question? My question was whether I can smoke while praying. Do you see any difference between the two? It's only the sequence. Smoking, praying take place simultaneously, but only thing is the way in which these things have been sequenced attracted two different answers, completely opposite answers. Okay, so this is what is called unconscious misrepresentation. Sometimes conscious, deliberate misrepresentation and unconscious misrepresentation. And therefore, how do you kind of pose the question is very important. Sometimes you encounter people in 2 minutes. Okay, what is hypothetical bias? Sometimes answer. For example, in one of our surveys, we asked people, "What do you think about your life after 5 years? Do you think it will be better or worse?" This is an hypothetical question, because if you ask my life right now, I'm living in it, and therefore I will be able to give you a proper answer. But after 5 years, I don't know whether I will live or how the world would be, because world is entirely complex. Okay. So when you ask these kinds of hypothetical questions, you will get only hypothetical answer. Okay. And therefore, we need to either avoid hypothetical questions, or when you ask hypothetical questions, they should be as realistic as possible. Okay. Please keep this in mind. Similarly, strategic bias. In the case of income, for example, people try to understate. What will they do with the expenditure? What will they do with the expenditure? They will overstate it, actually. Okay. So therefore, friends, there are many biases. For example, the survey researchers have identified around 18 different biases and errors that are supposed to occur in survey research. Okay. So all that we need to do is to be aware of all these biases, right? And there are materials which are available on doing survey, primary survey. Okay, so please, in case you are going to do survey, in case your research involves doing survey among the people and households, you be sure that you read all these materials carefully, be aware of all these biases and errors. As I said, many of the biases can be overcome by way of deciding the questionnaire properly, asking proper questions scientifically, and pre-testing the questionnaire, piloting the questionnaire, doing the analysis properly, doing the kind of descriptive statistics in order to find out errors, all those kinds of things. So there are many measures which are available to deal with the biases and errors in primary survey, and therefore you have to be aware of all those kinds of things and try to minimize as much as possible. And so I will stop here because I'm sorry I have taken more time than. So if there are some questions or clarifications, suggestions, then we will definitely discuss those things.
So if someone has a query, so you are free to ask. You can ask your questions.
Yeah, Nivedita has asked what is the minimum sample size to avoid sampling error and social. See, the point is the sample size does not matter. Even for the entire India, you can kind of do survey among 300 people and then kind of have extrapolated those results for the entire population in India, provided that you have selected the sampling scientifically, right? So you should have used appropriate sampling technique, sampling frame, to select the households. So whether it is 300 or 3000 households does not matter. As long as the sample is selected scientifically, then there is no problem. Right? So sample size does not matter. Okay. Yes.
Okay, Bikram Singh Roy.
Yes, Vikram.
Sir, how to remove common biasness in collecting the data?
Hmm. Common?
Common biasness.
Common bias means what?
Sir, common biasness is means that if there is a data collected to the similar individual on the independent variable and dependent variable, there is a chance of the common biasness.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. No, no, that is why you should have diversity in the sample, right? So, for example, in order to overcome this bias, you can use a stratified random sampling or
Okay.
proportionate stratified random sampling. Okay, so you stratify the entire population. Okay, for example, sometimes if you don't use proportionate random sampling, stratified random sampling, then what will happen is that you will end up with selecting only large farmers. Okay, but your aim is to see how large, medium, small, and marginal farmers are kind of practicing agriculture. But sometimes you may end up with selecting mainly the large farmers, and therefore this kind of common bias will occur. In order to avoid that, you have to ensure that you are selecting farmers representative of the marginal farmers, small farmers, medium farmers, and large farmers. Okay, so this is where stratified random sampling will help you to overcome this problem.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Bye bye.
Uh, Actually, Nivedita, I think you should be asked directly to sir.
No, the yes.
Nivedita is there.
I'm dealing with unknown population with snowball sampling. So guide me, sir, to minimize sampling. No, no. So in this case, snowball sampling is okay. Fine. See, again, as long as you are not going to generalize the results for the entire transgender group, okay, you can kind of use snowball sampling, which is etc. In order to ensure representativeness, the results that we derive from sampling should be representative of the entire population. Okay. So, but in the case of transgender issue, you may want to study some specific issue related to transgender. You may not be interested in objective is to study certain specific aspects.
हेलो मैडम, मैं अभी कर रहा हूँ आपको फोन।
and